Welcome everyone to Grace to Gratitude. Oh my God, I'm so excited to be here today with Greg Johnson. Greg, how are you?
I am better for being here with you today as
Oh, I
well.
always love when we have these opportunities to be together, and I know that we're all in for something very special. So just to sort of whet everybody's appetite, let me just tell you that I've come to know Greg and his incredible work through Facebook. And it's amazing how there's so much that we can learn about each other and from each other on a platform that you would think is going to be sterile, right? And void of emotional and human contact. And yet, I'm sorry, it's just not the case. I've grown to love him so much and the work that he does and what he brings to this world. So, without further ado, Greg, thank you so much for being here. And we are really so ready to hear your story about how grace opened the door for you to gratitude.
Well, thank you, Marcy. And yes, bless Facebook because I am very limited in my technology. I'm this minister who has spent 20 plus years sitting in the middle of a health and wellness corporation here in New York City, Emblem Health, doing family caregiving. And I have grown to love and respect Facebook. And in my international work, wanted to stay in touch with people, but knew that it had to be as simple as on and off. You weren't going to hear from me, as we both know. Well, that has worked. And so we've done a lot with Facebook Live. And one of the great, great blessings has been meeting you and meeting many of your guests and hearing the wonderful programs. And you and I had the privilege of doing the conversation on peace, and I continued to
Yes.
listen to that series. I very much enjoyed it, and I loved being with you. And then when you started with grace and gratitude, I thought, oh yes, I want to be part of that. It's the core of my life.
Oh, wow.
It is the core of my life. Years ago, and I have to say it was years ago, I was born out in the Midwest in Racine, Wisconsin. And what do you do in Racine? You go to school and you go to church. I mean, those are the things that you did. And I was someone who had a form of polio, so I didn't particularly walk all that effectively well. And sports and that sort of thing were never going to be part of my life. Music was. And
Mhm.
so where does a musician have the opportunity to learn to sing and play in public? Well, it's in church.
Of course.
That's where my life began. So it's not a surprise that from an early age, I said the two things I wanted to do was to be a minister and to sing. Well, God has blessed me and I've done both, but what a journey. And so that's what I want to share because early on in my life, um, I was probably only about 10. So that's like 60 years plus ago.
But
Like,
who's counting?
who's counting? Exactly. And we were going to have a celebration at the church. And they put together a committee. And even though I was the youngest, which is used to be one of the conditions in my life, now I'm at the other end of the table. But I was always grateful just to have a seat at the table. And so I was part of the event and they were looking at everyone's perspective. And the theme for that celebration literally became the theme of my life. It
Mm.
was three words: grace, growth, and gratitude.
Ooh, I love that.
Grace, growth, and gratitude. And it was like the 75th anniversary of the church, and they were looking back at the unmerited love and goodness of God, the growth of the church, its mission and its congregation, and coming together in gratitude to say thank you, which in the Christian tradition is done through the Eucharist, which is known as the Thanksgiving, the Holy Communion. So all of those words were extremely fitting, but they rang in my heart, and they were to continue to ring in my heart as life went on. Now I'm going to jump ahead for a great many years because I want to talk about how gratitude saved my life.
And we want to hear it.
Yes, gratitude saved my life. I thought that the greatest curse in my life was the curse of having the curse of addiction, of being an alcoholic.
Hmm.
And I have now learned that it was the greatest blessing, and I give great thanks for the gift of being a recovering alcoholic. And it's something I talk about. And for those who are listening, I'm not speaking today as any particular brand of recovery. I do a great deal of work with the Addiction Institute here in New York. I serve as a chaplain there, a volunteer chaplain. But my speaking today is strictly my story. So I'm not endorsing anything, but I'm going to have to tell my story. So I don't want anybody to become upset that if I say something, I'm not pushing any one form of recovery. There are many and they're all wonderful and they're good. And what your journey is, I pray it's the right one for you. But about 1983, I realized, and so had a lot of other people, that I had a problem with alcohol and that I needed to come to terms with it. I was one of these who really loved and adored alcohol. I like to drink, and I guess that's appropriate for an alcoholic. But it was getting to the beyond stage. And some people say no one ever spoke to me about my alcoholism. I would have trouble finding 5 people who didn't talk to me about it, and God bless them, because it made me take a deeper look. And so, being the academic that I was always a very good student and a musician and performer and that sort of thing, and always ahead of my years in whatever I was doing. I always looked at things very academically. And I tell this story because it shows how wonderfully crazy addiction can be. I thought, yes, I must deal with this. So I went to the library and I took out every book I could possibly, and I did this repeatedly. I would go and take out every book that I could possibly find on alcoholism. I would come home and make a huge picture of martinis. I would sit and read the books. The knowledge, because I had an artistic, theatrical mind, it would stay up here as I drank the martinis until I passed out. And I would repeat this. But as I kept reading, because I come from and have been they wheeled me out to play when I was 3. So that's 71 years ago. I have been in that world and using the masks of it in many ways to help me. So that's what I did. And what was I doing? I was beginning really the longest journey of my life, from my head to my heart. I have gone around the world over 100 times physically, the physical world. But as I always say, the longest journey of my life was from my head to my heart.
And I say the same.
Yeah, it's so true. And then that I often jokingly say that I auditioned for AA for 3 years, during which time I was in 7 different detoxes. And I thought, well, probably my role in life is to write a guidebook to detoxes. I always had this helping sense to me, which did not make much sense. Hey, take care of yourself first, but I hadn't gotten to that yet. So among the 7 detoxes, and I finally ended up at a wonderful rehab, which I had talked my way out of again and again and again. But finally, I totally surrendered. And that was going to be a word that was equal to gratitude. Yes. And I ended up at a place called Marworth down in Waverly, Pennsylvania. And I will love it to my dying day. I was given a counselor, a woman counselor, who totally understood this gay man who had felt called to be a minister. That, even though I had gone to seminary, had not come to be. It has, as you know now. But it was a gift of really out of recovery. But she was the perfect person for me, and I will be ever grateful to my dying day for Marilyn. And we began looking at what was I missing? Well, obviously making a picture of martinis and reading, that was a pretty good start. But there were a lot of other things. I was doing things that were suggested, but I really wasn't doing it. And I did have such a terrible time with the word surrender. And it always seemed every meeting I went to, every book I picked up, they were always talking about surrender. And to me, that was failure, that you had totally messed up, until I heard the definition that has stayed with me forever and will. What is surrender? It's letting go gently to receive abundantly. Letting go gently to receive abundantly. And it's been the blessing of my life. So that began our discussions, but we kept on. What was I missing? What didn't I? Because I liked the program. I liked having a sponsor. I liked going to meetings. I liked being active, but I kept getting drunk. There was something I was missing.
Yep.
I was pulling the masks off slowly, which we all wear and save many times from far more serious consequences had we not used them. But one day, they would do these different tapes in the groups, and they were doing a tape, and the name of the tape was Blame and Gratitude. And I was sitting there, and all of a sudden, the lecturer, it was toward the end of the tape, and he began talking about a poem that had been very significant in his life. And as he began to speak, I began to cry.
Oh.
Because I was in the theater the day that that poem was written, and it was written for a very dear friend who was starring in that Broadway musical. And this was the poem. A bell is no bell till you ring it. A song is no song till you sing it. And love in your heart wasn't put there to stay, or love isn't love till you give it away. And I went running to Marilyn. I said, it's gratitude, it's gratitude, it's gratitude. That's what I've been missing. I have never been grateful for the gift of surrendering. And that began my journey in recovery. And one of the first things I did, and I dug the original pages out because it's gotten to be quite long. One of the first things she said to me, she said, Greg, you need to start a gratitude list. And I said, absolutely. Well, I don't know if it'll show, but this was the beginning. Now
it's a lengthy list.
Yes, there are pages and pages. And tonight, before I go to bed, which is the time I tend to look at the day and give thanks for it, I will add our broadcast, as I have every talk that I've ever given and that sort of thing, because I'm always grateful for that opportunity to share. And so this is a topic that I love to talk about. And as you well know, ministry did come to me. I have served, I've retired recently from the Marble Collegiate Church here in New York City, but I continue to do my work in family caregiving. And gratitude has constantly been a topic that I talk about with caregivers, that if they can just find one thing each day that they can focus upon and even talk, if conversation is possible, with their care recipient and share that. It's a moment of joy. And it doesn't need to be the big things, because on my gratitude list, there are, obviously the first thing is the realization of my lack of gratitude. But if you look down a little bit further, shaving with one hand became very, I mean, an old queen wants to look good no matter how bad you might be. And then down further is another one that I love, and that is eating soup. I still can get tearful about eating soup. Because,
that's so interesting.
Well, every detox I went to, they served soup. Well, who on earth coming off of alcohol can possibly get soup to your mouth? Here, have it. I sure can't. So I look at soup and I'm very grateful. I know I sound crazy, but
It's so wonderful.
and I say these things because I don't want people to think that these have to be grand theological arguments or state. No,
Right.
I was glad to be able to eat soup.
Yeah.
And so I urge people that it may not have been the long walk. Maybe they made only 2 steps. Maybe someone was able to sit up in bed. Maybe they were able to talk about something together, whatever it might be. Because during a caregiving period, it can be extremely difficult.
Of course.
And then, as I have continued, and I have done a great deal of this during this COVID period, both here, because one of the things I've been doing a great deal is one-on-one counseling. And of course, what is one of the biggest topics? It's death, dying, and grief.
Yes.
And I always find myself coming back as I'm talking to people to what I call really the journey of life. And it is from this experience that I learned it.
Mm.
We are given life. We are given life in love, and nobody is a mistake. I always like to make sure people know that, because too many of us have been told we were mistakes and unwanted. No one is a mistake. The circumstances of somebody's birth, that doesn't play into it. God wanted you here. So it was love that began the journey. And then grief comes into our lives.
Yes.
And we need to learn to surrender to that, to let go gently, but to receive abundantly.
Mm-hmm.
And as we do that, as we walk, as it were, through the labyrinth of life, because I often compare grief to that labyrinth where we walk into the center with our loved one. And not every caregiving situation ends in death, but many do, and certainly presently. We place the hand of our loved one in the hand of the divine, whatever word you want to use. Their journey's over on this plane, and they go on, and they're just fine. Now we need to walk back out, and on that journey out of the labyrinth, we need to give all the love that we gave to them to ourselves. We are our new care recipient, and we need to walk out. And as we do walk out, that becomes our surrender. And slowly gratitude, memories, something that was terribly funny, we'll remember it and giggle. And slowly the giggling, the beautiful memories, the precious thing. Yes, we're going to cry, and I say cry like mad. We're refreshing ourselves. But slowly, gratitude comes back into our lives. And where do we go from gratitude? Lives of love.
That's right.
That's the grace
Yeah.
that blesses each of our lives. And it has been my story.
Mm.
So I love to share it with you. And last time when I was with you, of course, I had lots of books. I only have one with you. I love books. And this, I'm prejudiced on this because one of the writers, I have been very privileged to have Desmond Tutu as a very close friend. But this is the Book of Joy by Archbishop Desmond Tutu and the Dalai Lama.
Yes.
And of the chapters is gratitude. And I love in it, first of all, in the chapter on gratitude, it reminded me so much of Arch. When I've had the privilege of being with him on visits and formal sorts of things. And one in particular, we were in Bali for an event, and I was actually playing host to him, as it were. And we did all the official things. But then when he got back to the villa where he was staying, he had requested the cell phone numbers of all the doctors and nurses at the hospitals we visited that day. And after a very extensive day and strenuous day, he sat that evening and telephoned each one to say, "Hi, this is Desmond Tutu. I just wanted to call and say thank you for what you're doing."
Oh, my Lord.
I mean, I just sat there with tears. So it's mentioned in here because he is known for that. All of the very important people will be around him, and he will get to the porters and the kitchen staff and chat with all of them as well. He's just, it's wonderful. But I loved this one line, and I just wanted to read it.
Sure.
Gratitude is the recognition of all that holds us in the web of life, and all that made it possible, and all that has made it possible to have the life that we have and the moment that we are experiencing now.
Mm.
That's very powerful. So I wanted to, and then the next line is, thanksgiving is a natural response.
Yes. And I think it's a perfect description, because when you reach that place, you cannot contain that thanksgiving.
That's
It
right.
just starts to flow. You cannot contain it. You can't help yourself. It is completely consuming, all consuming, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And you live then in the joy of which this book is talking about.
That's right.
And so I just wanted to share that one book for the people who are viewers. If they've not read it on so many levels, it will bless them. I know it's one of those books that I just keep reading over and over. And each time I go a little bit deeper.
Sure.
And it's such a gift. So I thought, oh, I've got to include that, because they were resources that help on the journey, because we continue on that journey.
So I want to, first off, thank you so much for sharing your story with us. But I want to go back to something that you had said about, I've forgotten how you said it, but it was, you were rehearsing for 3 years.
Oh yeah,
for
auditioning.
your sobriety, right? And one of the things that I want to just sort of, put a light on here for our audience is that we all do that. We all sort of kind of walk around the table, right? We
Yes.
don't know how many times it will take us until we come to that point of, as you described, surrender, being ready for surrendering to the truth. So one of the things that I think is really very important in our discussion about grace in particular actually takes place in that time frame.
Totally.
We may not recognize it. We may see it instead as our resistance, as our, pushing against, as our utter rejection of an opportunity to come into a higher vibrational frequency or to see things differently. But it's actually grace that is holding the energy for us to do that.
Absolutely.
And there's no judgment, no conditions whatsoever. It just holds the energy. It's like, okay, Greg, doesn't matter how long it takes you. You can audition as many times as you'd like and practice the script. You can, however you need to do it. But guess what? You're called right here and now to just let go, surrender, and let us catch your fall. Let us hold you. Let us be the foundation for your complete letting go and all of your new growth. And I love that you use that word initially, talking about grace, growth, and gratitude. It's exactly the sequence.
It is.
Amazing.
I had no idea when I was on that committee so many years ago that at 74, I would still be talking about it and looking back and seeing it.
Yeah.
And in fact, do I have 1 minute yet?
Of course you do.
Okay.
Absolutely.
I don't want to overdo it. But this morning in my little 24-hour-a-day book, which heaven always blesses me with a word that puts me in mind. And I just wanted to read this. As you look back over your life, it is not too difficult to believe that what you went through was for a purpose, to prepare you for some valuable work in life. Everything in your life may well have been planned by God to make you of some use in this world. Each person's life is like the pattern of a mosaic. Each thing that happened to you, like a tiny stone in the mosaic, and each tiny stone fits into the perfect pattern of the mosaic of your life, which has been designed by God and for which you can be grateful. I just said, well, I'm talking about the right topic today. Amen.
Yes, you are. Oh my God. Well,
Marcy,
thank you. It's
thank
just
you.
fantastic.
God bless. Wonderful to talk with you as
I
always.
know. Always such a joy, and also so inspirational and filled with so much hope, but also reassurance that there are no time limits for anything.
No,
We simply are really called to just be present. Know that the grace is there. Know that the growth is happening, and know that gratitude will catapult you into the newness of life that's always available and waiting for us.
happy Thanksgiving, my darling.
Yes.
Much to be thankful for you and your audiences.
Yes. And happy Thanksgiving to you. And again, thank you so much, Greg, for all that you do and all the wonderful energy of love and just pure essence of life that you bring always. So thank you so much. Mwah.
Namaste.
And before we end, please tell everyone how they can reach you.
Oh, the best way to reach me is on the email address, which is gregjohnson@gjp-international.com. And you can also find me on YouTube, and that's Family Caregiving with the Rev.
Wonderful.
And
Facebook, you're Gregory Johnson.
Facebook is Gregory Johnson. And yes, join us tomorrow, Friday morning with the Rev at 8 o'clock.
Yes, it's a wonderful program.
Thank you so much, Marcy.
Thank you.
God bless. We'll talk soon.
Yes, we will. Bye-bye now. Have a wonderful day. Thank you.